Welcome to the Content Matters podcast, where digital content and marketing pros talk shop. Tech may be changing fast, but great content is timeless. Get inside tips, trends, and practical know-how from the top minds in the digital content industry. Sponsored by Ingenix, the uniquely agile content management platform. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast, where we talk about everything about content management and improving your content overall. I am really happy to have with me today Chris Willis. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of Acrolinx, and that's an AI-powered content governance platform. So thank you, Chris. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I think some of the stuff that you're doing with your company is so super important, and I just think that it'd be really great to kind of get that information out there, because I'm not sure that everyone is doing some of this stuff. So let's just kind of kick in right away. Content marketing has really helped a lot of companies reach out, engage with their customers. It's really great, but it has turned into this explosion of content, and it's for all the great stuff it's doing, it's also causing a lot of really big challenges in terms of the quality of that content. And I'm assuming you see the same things, but what kind of challenges are you seeing in the work that you're doing today to create more impactful content?
What we're seeing right now is really, I mean, it might sound dramatic, but chaos in the engine. It's creating inefficiency, it's creating expense, and it's taking time. Content's great, it's important, but there's a lot of hands involved in content. Yep. And if you think about the way that an organization today, we sell primarily to global enterprises. So a big company creates content. It's not hiring a bunch of authors, people with authoring background that can write perfect content and deliver it, and it's done and it's ready. The model is slightly different than that. Somebody in your content strategy team either comes up with a topic or is asked for a piece of content. And now the process begins, and they reach out to not people that write, but rather subject matter experts, right? Yep. Smart people that do things, that live in product management and product marketing and development and wherever in your organization the engine is building product. And so they know a lot of things, but they're not writers. And in a lot of cases, they're global. So they may be writing in English as a second language. And there's this process now of creating this content and handing it off to editors who are supposed to understand what all of this means. In a lot of cases, this is highly technical content. And I can't just change the grammar, because I might change the context of what you've written. So this back and forth happens, and you have the opportunity, I guess, to hire expensive external agencies to do your editing, but most companies don't. And so weeks and months are spent in this back and forth, and finally it makes it back to the stakeholder management who is going to approve this content, and everybody has an opinion, right? Everybody weighs in, and what would be really great is this one thing, and now we're back to our subject matter experts, and we're back in the cycle. And eventually it reaches a point where the stakeholder is happy with it. And then the question is asked of, hey, has anybody talked to legal about this? And it all happens again, because it needs to go to legal, and they need to find and poke holes in it. And there's regulatory issues, and there's business issues, and finally makes it back to that content team. Here's your piece of finished content. It's been edited, it's been reviewed by management, it's been signed off on by legal, go to town. And what we're finding is that 50% of the content that's created through this method never gets used, because it's not timely, it's not important anymore, it's not relevant. When it was requested, it was a hot burning issue that needed to be addressed. But through the process, through this chaos that's happened in the engine, there's no longer any need for it. And that's, I think, this is the sort of the head nod that we have with a lot of our prospects as we discuss with them, like, is this something that you're going through? And in most cases they are. And when you tie that to, you know, the digital shift that most companies are going through, the focus on customer experience, reinvention that most companies are going through, and just the constant activity inside the business around strengthening the brand, differentiating on brand, buying and merging with brands, and combining global brands into one. There's this need for constant content. And 87% of companies believe that content is driving their business, and 97% of those people think that it's going to continue to grow. Just this requirement for content continues to grow. So all of these factors coming together kind of create a need for something different to happen.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that the content itself is not just in terms of the customer experience and the, you know, digital experience. It's not just web-based content that's kind of marketing. I don't want to call it fluff, but it's kind of more markety type content. It's like you said, there's also this technical content that is no longer just relegated to the back room. It's actually needs to come up and be part of the conversation, and it needs to be written and produced in a way that is easily digestible and understandable by everyone who needs access to it. So it's interesting how it's the type of content that's changing in the customer experience, the amount of content, and making sure it's all that nice, consistent brand voice. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, it's everything. There's a need for content to drive every piece of your business. So we do think in terms, I'm a marketer, and I think in terms of content marketing and the marketing and the content that we create in the marketing group. But just in my business, there's the support team creating support content. There's documentation, documenting the software. There's the UX team that's actually building content, you know, words into our product. And is the language that they're using in our product aligned with the language that we use as a business? And all of these areas need that level of consistency. They need, I'm going to use a word, they need governance over the way that words are used. And that's, I mean, I feel like that's a big shift over the course of the last several years that's leading to a rise in a new practice inside the business that might not even have a place of ownership yet, but is incredibly important.
And that's the work that you do with Acrolinx. The company's been around for quite a while, but it's really evolved how its solutions are built and what it actually creates and provides to customers. So tell me a little bit about the company and this idea that you guys have of strategy aligned content.
So the company was born out of the concept of speaking with one clear voice. So aligning a business, and that can be the business of a single business unit. So a lot of this started for us in technical documentation, technical content, or it could be across an entire organization. When we think about brand voice, audience voices, the personas that one sells and develops for. What we do at the heart of it is, you know, we're an AI-powered platform that's eliminating this content chaos that I'm talking about by delivering strategy-aligned content at scale. So when I describe what I mean by strategy-aligned content, it's everybody in my position, in a CMO seat or a brand owner seat, has a whiteboard in their office, and on that whiteboard is the language of the business. So it's the tone of voice, it's the terminology, it's the level of clarity at which we write for the audiences that we write for, the words that those audiences care about, languages in which they communicate. And we spend a lot of time thinking through that, defining our brand. How do we sound like we sound? And all of that, again, lives on a whiteboard. And I show it to the board. We all feel good that we know who we are. And then I have people write content for me, and none of them care about that even a little tiny bit. Everybody has their own voice. Everybody writes like they write. And so all of my work in defining the business and the way that we communicate to the outside world goes out the window. And I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to essentially take everything that's on that whiteboard, digitize it, make it actionable. And that's what Acrolinx does. The first phase of working with Acrolinx is the capture phase. And we capture all of that off the whiteboard, and we run against all your content, and we find that delta between what you think you're creating and what you're actually creating. And we do it numerically. We score you across a number of different factors. Like I said, alignment to your tone of voice, to your expected tone of voice, alignment to the terminology that you use, to the clarity levels that you expect. We do it across multiple voices, and out comes an Acrolinx score. And that Acrolinx score represents alignment. Is this what you think you're trying to create? Is this aligned with the words and the voice and terminology that you're trying to work with? And in many cases, the answer is it's not very well aligned. The next stage of what we do then is that alignment process. So allowing the writers in real time to check their work and be prompted to fix it. Hey, what you just said there. And so an example in my past life, we were a testing company that didn't want to use the word test, which is really difficult because everybody in our company knew that we were a testing company. But I don't want to say that because we're writing for DevOps, and I want to be a quality company, a software quality company. And how do I ensure that every writer does that? With the sidebar in Acrolinx, it prompts you, hey, you type text. We don't say that. So maybe we would suggest you use the word quality, and you click that and it replaces it, and you're done. When I talk to other CMOs, especially in cases of M&A, where a company is either acquiring somebody or being acquired, the easy question to start this conversation is, would you like a tool that would allow you to make sure that every time somebody writes the name of your company, it's the new name of your company? Oh, yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now let's work outwards from there. What else would you like to do? And I mean, the conversations that you have when you start that way are incredible. We talked to an insurance company that sells boutique insurance products. And one of those insurance products is around equine husbandry. And they said, look, we don't know how to hire for this, for people to write this content. There aren't a lot of people that come out of college that speak the language that this audience speaks. So are you telling me that Acrolinx can learn how to communicate to people interested in equine husbandry insurance, and our writers can just write the concepts and it will correct them and use the right words? Okay, cool. We're having the right conversation. That's what alignment is. We also do that through automation. So we connect directly to your repository, whether that's a content marketing system like Post, or it's Google Docs, or it's your CMS, or even, I mean, companies are now doing it around Git and Confluence, where we can just run through the entire repository every night, score all your content, provide all of the feedback that needs to be changed through the system. It goes back out to the writers. They make their changes and recommit that content when they come in the morning, and the circle continues. And what that does is it allows you to keep up with the speed of business, especially in cases of technical content where software development is moving so quickly. How do your documentation people keep up with that?
Right.
And this is a pathway to be able to do that. And then the final aspect of what we do is the analysis of your entire content operation. So the ability to not only provide you with tools that will make you faster, that will save you money, but also the ability to see your quality as a numeric value as it changes over time across all of your individual writers by individual person, department, or group. It's a really interesting platform and solution. And I mean, I think the reason that I joined the company here in the first place was because I saw the need for it in my own business. Like I was living the life of a prospect without knowing it. And when I came across it, I wanted to come and work here.
I think one of the things I'm curious about when you talk about voice is, from my experience, it is sometimes a company, although there's one company voice, sometimes you have thought leaders who write with their own voice, and you want kind of their own, I don't know, brand or voice to come through. So is there a way to support both of those kind of approaches, or does it, this is the voice and everything has to match this voice? Like, as a marketer yourself, do you think there should just be one voice from the brand?
Nope, there's the concept of hierarchical rules. So
Okay.
think in terms of the enterprise as a whole. There's things that you do, there's things that you say. In all cases, they are not going to change. But then there are, I mean, you can think about who's writing or you can think about who's consuming, as I'm going to dramatically simplify, filters that content's going to pass through. So if the CEO is communicating, he's got that top level, things we always do. But below that, things that he does or she does. Reversing that, if you think in terms of pharmaceuticals as an example, drug manufacturing, you're going to speak differently to a 55-year-old male than you are to a nursing mother. And you may be sending them the same information, but the voices are very different. So again, we have a top level rule set. That's things we always do. And then we have an audience-based set of rules that define how we communicate with the different people, the different personas that we communicate to.
That's really interesting, the audience level rules, because yeah, everybody, your different personas, you know, often looking at for your solutions and your products or your services, and how do you create the content once but have it speak to different audiences in a slightly different way? It's, yeah, I cannot even imagine how companies, you know, just sit there and write content. Okay, now we got to write for this persona. Now we have to change it and write for this persona. Like, it would just be unwieldy to try to manage and keep track of.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the other term that is really gaining a lot of attention, and it's not just coming from Acrolinx, I've seen it in a couple of other places, is this idea of active content governance. What does that mean exactly?
So everybody has a concept of governance when it comes to content, right? I mean, so consistency matters. Like, nobody's going to stand up and say at their company that consistency in their content doesn't matter. Or, you know, from a process standpoint, you have a way of doing things. So even if that way of doing things isn't great, it's still a governing approach. And everybody in the company knows that diverting from that process causes problems that are going to erode the ability to successfully deliver their end product. They, you know, I think people all agree that eliminating issues in content earlier is going to save them time and money, and that's an aspiration in their business. They may have some sense of measurement and how to measure content, but in general, what we're finding is that, you know, governance is a thing, but deliberate, or what we're calling active governance, is something else altogether. You know, in the case of a lot of companies I've spoken to over the last few months, most of them believe that they've bitten into the concept of content governance, which is great. But what we find as we dig into it is that they're lacking that deliberate approach around setting up rules, their guidance, their processes. They've established that way of doing things that's unique to their process, but that's really as far as they've gotten. Now, when we talk about the concept of active content governance, you know, what people mean when they say content governance is they're really talking about their content strategy, understanding what the content is for, and then taking active steps to ensure that it meets the goals. So we've looked at it from a number of angles. You know, oversimplification, but the first thing you look at is quality. So on the subject of quality management, when you think of how people do things today in sort of a passive method, it's relying heavily on the motivation of the team. Writers and editors need to be driven to deliver great quality. There isn't really a standard mechanism for them to rely on in order to do that. And there's nothing really supporting new additions to the team as they come in to be successful as they join business. When you think in terms of the ACG model, active content governance approach, it's providing them with, you know, tools and guidelines designed to eliminate quality issues early in the process, allowing anybody in the door. We talked about any writer being able to write equine husbandry content. So anybody delivering content can deliver that ready for review right out of the gates. And that review is going to focus on what the words say and mean rather than the errors that are in it. And that's a whole big shift right there in and of itself, is when a company can start reviewing content for what it says, not how it's broken, that's a different world. Because I don't think there's anybody listening to us right now that hasn't gotten a piece of content to review, fixed all the glaring errors, taken in nothing about what it says, and just says, well, I'm glad it doesn't have any obscenities in it. Here you go.
Yeah.
And
No,
now it's in production.
Yeah.
And that's it's hard. And I'll come back to a real life example of this. The next thing we think about is KPIs. And I like to talk about, the definition of good and the definition of done. Can you go and write me a piece of content, make it good if you could? Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what it means. And in general, what it means is when I say so. And I am one of a number of people that have that vote. So the first person that thinks so is your editor. The next person is your direct manager. Eventually, it makes it to somebody like me. And it's good when I say it's good. And that's not great. And it makes the definition of done even harder, because now like 4 people have to say that it's good. And then eventually somebody has to sign off on it. And if you can develop a definition of done, you're very close to this concept, again, of ACG, of active content governance, this setting a standard level of content quality that all content's measured against. It means that best case, all of your content's aligned with the objectives you set out at the beginning. So it's aligned with your strategies, it's aligned with your brand. In the worst case, it means that no content's going to be embarrassingly flawed, which again, please make sure it doesn't have obscenities in it. And I've lived this. I remember not so many years ago, a PR agency that I worked with that was writing a number of our press releases spelled our top customer's company name wrong in 3 consecutive press releases. And I mean, are bad for not having a better governance approach, but I mean, eventually you lose your ability to push content. And actually, I fired them. But that ability to define, yep, this is good to go, and yep, this is done. We do that through numerics. We score this content, leveraging all of the data around it, to allow for a definition, a numeric definition of good and a numeric definition of done. Guidance, so tying back to the beginning, again, when we talk about quality, again, driving your writers to use the tools that you've created. Because how many times, I mean, in any company, has one of your writers asked you for an updated copy of your company's tone of voice guidelines or your terminology directory? Like, nobody does that. It's a thing that you create and you put in front of people on the first day of their job, and then they shove it in a desk drawer. And then during the review process, somebody says, did you not, let me get you a most updated copy of this. But by that point, it's too late. I mean, that doesn't exist. And part of my job as a CMO is to develop this brand voice, this strategic messaging, terminology, tone that represents us as a business. And so it's important to me that people leverage that. So this real-time inline guidance available to all writers as a part of their process means there's no learning or document review or on-ramp to how we do things. I mean, if you think in the most generic of terms, Microsoft spell check, it's right there when you need it. You don't need to be able to spell necessary or Mississippi anymore. And I don't know if they even teach that in school, because Microsoft knows those things for you. Now, what if you go beyond that and go beyond spelling and simple grammar to provide that guidance on clarity, consistency, style, tone of voice, brand? That starts to change the game. The result is that every one of your writers delivers content that's aligned with your company's voice. It sounds like you, it looks like you, it resonates with your audience. And it all comes back to this content that is aligned with your business is going to perform better for whatever the purpose of that content. I'm not even going to get into, I talked about the content chaos process and the review process at the beginning of this. That in and of itself, like, everybody's lived that, and nobody wants to go back to that multi-step review. You want to live in a world where there's an automated process. Content is written, it's run through a series of AI filters to confirm correct alignment with company guidelines. There isn't any snark, any attitude, any opinion. It's objective. Is it or isn't it? And an interesting thing, I think back several years ago, a lot of writers in our customers were very concerned about the concept of I'll call it a robot reading their content and judging them. And that's not what we do. It's not the angle here. This is, if anything, I'm concerned about the reverse. Your editor may not like your shirt today and comes over and lays out every every mistake you've ever made because they don't like your outfit and they're having a bad day. Acrolinx is never going to do that. Doesn't care what you're wearing, isn't having a bad day, is working a million words a day and is just riding you through the rules. Here's what you did. And the result of that is, by the time the content gets to your editor who might be having a bad day, it's right. It's real simple. And what we learned last year or 2 years ago at our Content Connections user conference was that, specifically at one of our largest customers, the writing group had come around entirely and really looked forward to their experiences with what they thought was going to be this robot overlord, which in the end becomes their best friend because they're all doing better in their job. They're all building aligned content and looking great in the eyes of management, which is a really neat thing. And then finally, just best practices, really incorporating in the ability to create well thought out process on how you're going to create content. And that really is a critical step to practicing active content governance. If you integrate automated and AI steps into a process, you're rising that process to the next level of alignment and efficiency. I don't know that we're inventing anything new, and I like to say that ACG can be practiced with or without any products. You don't have to buy something to practice active content governance, but it certainly helps. We actually wrote an ebook on the topic on active content governance that's available at acrolinx.com that really lays out all these steps. It's very encompassing, and the goal of it wasn't necessarily just to sell product. Yes, that's what I'm here to do, but it was designed to be an actionable guidebook for companies aspiring to reach a state of active content governance, which is really what ACG is about. I didn't trademark the term active content governance because I don't want to own it. I want it to be a thing in the marketplace. It would be like trademarking inbound marketing. HubSpot was a founding member of that movement, but everybody aspires to have strong inbound, and I think everybody should aspire to have active content governance in their business.
As a writer myself, I would love a tool to help me be better and improve the way I'm writing for one of my clients, so I can absolutely see the benefits of it from the writer's perspective. From a company's perspective, how long does it take them from the time they say, we need to do this, to kind of set up the process, not just in the tool itself, but just how they want to do it? What do they have to think about? And then how long does it kind of on average take them to get the tool all set up and working the way they need it to?
So our implementation plan is generally in a 3-month period. And it starts with that capture phase. And it comes down to how well the business knows itself. We take for granted that these global enterprises know exactly all of the information, all of the rules, all the guidance that they're going to want to build into this. In some cases they do, in some cases they don't. So we can do some harvesting for them of their existing content, look at both their good and bad content, and the system will pull things out of it to help them define their rule set. But that's the first stage, is really going in and looking at what they have today, looking at what they see as successful content, and leveraging that to build the filters and the framework inside the platform that are going to end up driving the entire process. From there, it's the tweaking and testing and making sure that we have all the audiences accounted for, and that they're ready to build across all of their content areas. Many of our customers start in one business unit and expand from there. But late 2018 into 2019 really has been the year of C-level exposure to this concept. And we've gone from talking to VP level and director level silo owners in technical content, in marketing, in customer experience, to talking to the C-level executives that oversee that really understand the importance of the strategy as it drives across all of the content being created. And so the broader the initial first step, obviously, the longer it takes to have the system learn how to work with the customer.
And obviously, excuse me, the C-suite executives are really finding this important because this is affecting the customer experience, having this inconsistent brand voice, inconsistent, way of speaking to customers. If this can help them really bring that experience in line across the board.
Exactly. I mean, we're seeing more and more every day, for better or worse, businesses' point of interface with their consumer is becoming digital. And so, I mean, if you think in terms of a bank like Tangerine, used to be ING Bank up in Canada, and they've turned all their branches into coffee shops. And so it becomes very important, all their touch points are their only relationship building tools. And if you're speaking in 15 different audience voices and your tone is all out of whack and you're using words that nobody understands, that's how you represent yourself to the world. And in a lot of cases, in this new digital economy that we live in, you only get one shot.
Yeah, definitely. So I saw that you won the Best Content Marketing Solution at the Marketing Technology Awards for 2019. That must have been pretty nice. Does this mean that, companies are paying more attention? Because there are tons of content marketing solutions out there that support all kinds of approaches or ways to do content marketing. So for you guys to win, that must really mean this type of content governance is becoming much more critical.
There are a lot, and thank you for noticing. Yeah, I mean, we won that award over a number of companies that are content marketing platforms, and we are not. We were in that category because we don't fit a category. So if you got to pick something, that's what we picked. And what we took away from that, and at the same time, we were a finalist at another award ceremony for Vendor of the Year for content marketing in Europe. It was the same evening. It was a Thursday night last month. And what we took away from that experience is that, yep, there's lots of content marketing platforms out there, but what's important to content marketing right now? And it's not where you put your content. It's not the ideation process. Yes, all of those things are great. What's important right now is that alignment process. How do you create the right content at the right time for the right people? And what we bring to market is very individualized. There isn't a magic quadrant for us. There isn't a Forrester wave. We don't fit a category. I spend a lot of time speaking with Serious Decisions, and they have a lot of content and overview on the content marketing technology space, and we're not in it. We don't fit the criteria, the checklist of required features and functionality to be a content marketing platform. And that's cool, that's fine. We're different. And what we're seeing and what you've recognized is that when people are thinking about the next thing that they need to be successful in this area, they're thinking about us. And that's an exciting place for us to be, because not so many years ago, we were just starting to scratch the surface of this, and now we're starting to win awards.
I absolutely think this is something every company should be thinking about and paying attention to. So yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate your being on here today and kind of talking about this active content governance, because I do think it's critical, and I think there are a lot of companies that could benefit from understanding it better and applying it to their own content marketing programs and content management programs. So thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Great. And thank you everyone for listening. That's it for today. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.